Hello everybody, today I'm coming back around to talk about something that I alluded to almost a full year ago, and that is the LUCYBOTs. Now that they've been around for about a year, I've had a chance to really put them to the test with hundreds of users on my site and make necessary tweaks, so I'm rather proud of them. So first of all, what are the LUCYBOTs? Technically speaking, they are calculators that I have programmed to emulate my personal method of recommending a size and a style of corset for my clients. At the moment, there are 15 different LUCYBOTs, each one designed to work with a specific type of corset that is available in my shop. For instance, the Hourglass underbust here, the Libra, the Jolie, the Hourglass overbust, and you can see all the rest down here. So there are two ways to get to the LUCYBOTs. If you go to the main page here, this is my home page, go to shop and then go down to size and help. Now if you press this one directly here, it will take you to the video that teaches you how to take your measurements, as well as my contact form where I will recommend something for you personally. However, it might take me a couple of days to get back to you. So if you want something that is about 95% like me, 90 to 95% accurate, and you want an answer instantaneously, then you just go over here to my LUCYBOTs. And as I mentioned before, you scroll down and you see all the bots here. And if you want it in list form, you just go down to the bottom and you can choose these over here. The second way to access the LUCYBOTs is if you're already in my shop, like right here. So let's say you want a standard length corset. So pressing on this, hourglass silhouette, and let's click on literally any of the ones here, this guy here. And in the description, you will see a link, try the LUCYBOT sizing calculator, and it will automatically take you to the correct LUCYBOT for that specific silhouette. So let's try a couple of different examples so you can see how it works. So for the underbust, we'll plug in my usual measurements here. So my underbust is usually about 30, but I like to put 31 just for a little bit of more breathing room. My natural waist is about 28, and my upper hip is usually around 34. It's actually 33 and a half, but I prefer a little bit more space rather than less. The LUCYBOT might ask you some other questions as well, like whether you prefer a small lacing cap or if you prefer to lace your corsets completely closed. You all know that I usually prefer to lace mine fully closed. And then it says find the waist size, but we're not done yet. So the LUCYBOT recommends the size 24, which is correct. When I wear this style of corset, I usually prefer to wear the size 24 closed. Now, if I wanted a gap, it will size me down to 22, so that is a little bit open in the back. But I'll go back down here. Now, it says, but we still need to check your ribs and hips. So below the sizing recommendation, it will give you a prediction as to what kind of lacing gap in the back you will end up with. So it says to prevent muffin top, your corset might need a lacing gap about 1 inch wide at the top and 0 inches wide at the bottom, meaning it's fully closed. So for the gap shape predictor, it says that I might need to wear the corset with a V-shaped gap if I want to avoid muffin top. Now I know that my ribs are compressible, so I can close this particular corset, but it's true that it's just a little bit more comfortable with a tiny gap at the very top. So if you are comfortable with this recommendation, then it gives you a link here where it will take you to the standard length hourglass corsets, where any of these will fit you in size 24 basically. Now, what if you had a different rib cage measurement to me? Let's say that you had a rib cage of 35 instead of 31, and then you try to do this again. It will still recommend the same waist size for you, but you see here, to prevent muffin top, your corset will need to be 5 inches wide at the top edge. So the gap shape predictor has changed now. It says your corset will have a dramatic V-shaped lacing gap. LUCYBOT would recommend the Libra corset for you instead. The Libra has an extra 4 inches of room in the ribs. So this is why it's important to read everything on the LUCYBOT page and not just stop at the sizing recommendation. It's good to read right to the end and look at the gap shape predictor, because it is a calculator at the end of the day. It will tell you what waist size will be comfortable for you if you were to insist on purchasing the Hourglass. But if you do read to the bottom, you'll see that it actually recommends a completely different silhouette for you if you want to have a more parallel gap in the back and if you want to be a bit more comfortable. Now let's go back again. Let's say somebody has the same rib and hip measurements as myself, but let's say that their natural waist is a bit smaller than mine. Let's say it's 25 inches naturally. So if we were to try the LUCYBOT again, it will recommend a corset of 22 inches. However, if you scroll down one more time, it says that to prevent muffin top, you might need 3 inches of space, and to prevent too much pinching on your hips, it'll need 2 inches lacing gap in the back. So even though it says, I prefer my corset to lace closed, it's still going to predict having a lacing gap in the back here. So if you want your corset to lace fully closed at 22 inches, what that means is that this particular corset is not curvy enough for you. You might need something closer to the Artemis corset, which is 1 level curvier, or the Gemini corset, which is almost 2 levels curvier. So just keep that in mind. You can't always stop right at the waist recommendation or the size recommendation. Please be sure to look at the gap shape and width predictor as well. And one final comparison, let's say somebody has the same rib and waistline measurements as me, but let's say that they have a wider pelvis. Let's say that their pelvis is closer to 40 inches instead of 34 inches. So it recommends 24 inches again because it's based off your natural waist size here. But of course, your corset will have a dramatic A-shaped lacing gap if you go to the gap shape predictor. So if you are naturally pear-shaped, then LUCYBOT will recommend a corset with hip ties or a Gemini corset for you. So the calculator, it has its limitations. It's not going to be as completely intuitive as a live person recommendation, but I've programmed it to do its best, where if the V-shaped lacing gap is too dramatic, it will recommend a Libra for you. If the A-shaped lacing gap is too dramatic, it will recommend a Gemini for you. So that's enough of the underbust recommendation. Now let's try an overbust recommendation. So let's go back here to my shop page, choose overbust, and let's try the Hourglass overbust rather than the slim. And let's choose a lovely spring moss green brocade. Why not? So let's go over to the LUCYBOT sizing calculator for the overbust. So let's say it's somebody bigger and more curvaceous than myself. So let's do a full bust of 43 inches, ribs 37, waist naturally, let's call it 38 inches. Now it's 100% normal for a natural waist to be a little bigger than the rib cage as you get up in size. So this is quite common that I see here. And let's say that the mid hip is around 44 inches. Why not? All right, so one thing that you'll notice about this particular corset is that it doesn't ask you whether you want a lacing gap in the back or not, because this particular corset was drafted by a different team. It's designed to have a little bit of a lacing gap in the back, and that is so the side seam here and the dip right at the side seam. This is supposed to align with your armpit. And if you try to force the corset completely closed in the back, what you're going to do is you're going to pull that side seam a little bit too far back, and that dip where your armpit's supposed to be to give you full mobility of your arms, it's going to be pulled closer to your shoulder blade area. And it's going to cause some squish in the back, as well as it's going to feel a little bit too high in the armpit, so to speak. The next thing you'll notice is that it recommends a size 30 for you. This is 8 inches smaller than the natural waistline. Now that might sound very daunting, it might sound very small, but remember, with the Hourglass overbust, is a very curvy cut, so it does require a bit more of a waist reduction compared to the slim silhouette corsets. And like I said before, it also accounts for a little bit of a lacing gap in the back. So even though this is a size 30, you might be wearing it at closer to 31, 32 inches. That being said, if you are not a very compressible person, or if you don't think that this would be a comfortable reduction for you, if this is, say, your very first corset, or you simply just don't want to go down that much in the waistline, then the LUCYBOT will recommend the slim silhouette overbust for you instead. So you don't have to cinch your waist smaller than you're comfortable with. You just need to choose a different silhouette. Now let's say that you still want the Hourglass overbust. You just choose a size 32 or a 34 because that sounds a little bit better for you. Now, one cannot take what the LUCYBOT says and simply go up or down a size based on a whim. Because if you go larger than what the bot says, your corset's probably going to flare at the bust and the hips. And if you go smaller than the bot says, you'll get a huge lacing gap in the back and the fit will be off. So there's a reason why the LUCYBOT recommends this particular size. It is the size that will reduce your waist by, a certain percentage or a certain amount, but it's also going to ensure that the hips will be snug but not too tight, and that the bust will fit and not gape nor, be too crushingly small for you. So let's say that you're cool with the size 30. You'll take the recommendation. But again, we're not done, because for every single overbust corset in my shop, there are 3 different bust sizes. So if it's, 11 different waist sizes and 3 different bust sizes, that's 33 different combinations that you can possibly choose from. So the bust is calculated based on your cup size and your bust spring. And I'm going to define both of these for you. Now, there's a reason why I chose these measurements above here with like a full bust of 43 and an underbust or ribcage measurement of 37, because a person with these measurements would probably wear a bra size of about 36G or H cup. And somebody who is that full busted might default to choosing the large bust overbust in this situation. But I'm going to tell you why I actually recommend a medium here. So the first factor here is your cup size, and as anybody who has worn a bra before, your cup size is determined by the difference between your ribcage measurement and your full bust measurement. So somebody who has a full bust of 6 or 7 inches larger than their rib cage would be considered an F or a G cup. It depends on how malleable their bust tissue is as well. Now, the medium size overbust is designed to, at its smallest, when the bust ties are completely closed, it will fit about a D to double D. And when it's open, it will fit up to about a G cup. Now, if you were to go with the large bust overbust, at its smallest, it fits about F or G cup. And at its largest, it goes all the way up to J or K cup. So somebody who has about a G cup, they could probably get away with the large bust if they were surgically enhanced and they didn't have any kind of squish to their bust line, if they didn't need any kind of support. But the thing is, if they were to loosen the bust ties here, they will lose that support and the front edge of this corset would flop forward. So you're not going to get the same kind of support. It will flare, it will gape, and the bust tissue will probably kind of fall from gravity and settle into the lower part of the cup here, making it look too large. So that is why I recommend the medium cup. It will allow you the choice to loosen this and show a little bit more cleavage or décolletage if you want to, but it's not going to lose too much support. And if you are the type of person whose bust line might fluctuate throughout the month or throughout the year, then you will be able to adjust it larger or smaller depending on your comfort level of that day, and it will neither be too large nor too small. But the second way that we determine the bust size is through the bust spring. And like a rib spring is the difference between the ribs and the waistline, the hip spring is the difference between the hips and the waistline. The bust spring is also the difference between the full bust and the corseted waistline. So in this particular case, you have a size 30 corset and you have a 43-inch bust. So that's a 13-inch difference. The medium will fit anywhere from 11-inch bust spring up to, I would say, about 15-inch bust spring, while the large bust starts at a 14-inch bust spring. So you can see why it would automatically be, if you are at a 13-inch bust spring, why the large bust in this size would be a bit too much for you. The large bust will fit somebody who has up to 18 or 19-inch bust spring. So keep that in mind. So in this particular case, the consensus here, or the two that match up, is the medium bust, and that is what I would personally recommend for this person as well. And so you have your answer. Waist size 30, bust size medium, so you can go back here and choose the waist size 30 and bust size medium, and you have your answer. Now, if all of this went over your head, don't worry, the bot does all the thinking for you, and she's correct like 95% of the time. Even though if you go to this page and you scroll down, you'll see, overbust corsets, blah, 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 and here's your sizing chart, and here's the measurements, and you can even go to my YouTube channel and you can see all the sizing information that I posted about this particular corset there. If after all that you still don't know what size to get, the LUCYBOT will always be there for you. So in conclusion, yay, LUCYBOTs, and they are fast, they're completely free, and you can get your answer immediately. Now, if you still prefer to consult the OG Lucy, who is myself, aka Meet Lucy, to differentiate from the robot Lucy, my contact form, it's not going away forever. It's still here. I'm still reachable and accessible, with the caveat that my email responses are not instantaneous like this. Sometimes takes 1 to 2 business days because I am just one woman. But I am accessible, don't worry. So if you are playing around with the LUCYBOT and it's giving you an answer that you don't 100% trust, you can still feel free to fill out this form and send it to me, and I will get back to you in a day or two and verify whether the LUCYBOTs are still working correctly or not. But at this point, the LUCYBOTs have been around for a year. I've had plenty of opportunities to tweak them, and most people seem to be really happy with the suggestions that they gave. So yeah, enjoy trying the LUCYBOTs for yourself. Again, you just go over here, go to sizing help at LUCYBOTs, and you'll find all of them there, or you'll find each one in the relevant listing in the shop. I hope you get good use out of this. I hope it's fun and intuitive to use, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.